Good morning, everyone. I'm Saldi Carandelian Jr., and I will be discussing to you about the interview and observation. At first, interview and observation seems very easy in just a first glance because all you have to do is to interview a person. You have to communicate with the person, ask him or her questions, and to observe using your senses. But in research, there is a deeper meaning to all of these things. Okay, let's start first with the interview. Okay, an interview is generally a qualitative research technique which involves asking open-ended questions to converse with respondents and collect illicit data about a subject. So there are two kinds of questioning or interviewing: the open-ended, using the open-ended questions and the closed-ended questions. What are the difference between the two? So the open-ended questions are questions that cannot be, again, that cannot be answered by yes or no, and instead require the respondent to elaborate on their point. So for example, I will give you example of these two later on. And the second one is a closed-ended question. Obviously, it's an opposite of the open-ended question, which are questions that can only be answered by selecting from a limited number of options, usually multiple choice questions with a single word answer, yes or no, or a rating scale like a Likert scale from strongly agree to strongly disagree, and things like that. Okay, so as I said a while ago, these are the example of open-ended questions and open and closed-ended questions. Let's start with the closed-ended questions. Questions which are limited by Likert scale or a certain scale. So, would you recommend our product service? It will be answered by yes or no, or definitely yes, definitely no. Did you experience good customer service? There's no need for elaboration, as it said. You just need to answer yes or no. Would you consider using our product service again? I said yes or no. Did you like our product service, etc., etc. So as you can see, close-ended questions in an interview are limited by a certain question, by a certain answer. There is no need for you to elaborate. And the second one, the open-ended question: what were the main reasons you chose our product? So it cannot be answered by yes or no. Imagine, what were the main reasons you chose your product? You say yes. No, you have to elaborate your answer. And that's very useful in a qualitative sense. So how did you feel about our customer service? So you have to elaborate. And so with other questions, why are you looking for a product service today? How will you describe your experience with us, etc., etc. Now, these are the four types of research of interviews in research. You can use the email interview, especially today that we can, some of the places in the Philippines cannot be what we call this, cannot use the face-to-face interview because of the pandemic. And second one, personal interview, opposite with the email and the web interview, as well as the telephone interview. So all of these things you can use in an interview. Like for example, when I was in high school, I mean, when I graduated high school, I went to a research company and we use all these techniques. We went to infield and ask questions about what is your favorite or what is your most sold or most um how do you say it? Most favorite, it's not favorite or whatever. So what product is most sold in your market? Like for example, that's what we call the Project Isaiah. So in Project Isaiah, we went store to store in a certain place, and then we asked the tindera there what products is most used or most sold in her or his store. So that is a form of personal interviews. Then we're going to record that, and then the record will go to the encoder, and they will analyze the results. So that is just our type of interview. Today, we don't use the field interview or personal interviews because of the pandemic, but instead we use the Google survey form. We use the email, the web interview, and the telephone interview. Perhaps for a higher degree, for example, in the master's, to verify the answer or to elaborate questions. Now, the interviewer, there is a need for us to see the characteristic of an interviewer, because the interviewer is an important asset in an interview. Like for example, the interviewer in most cases is a subject matter expert. They have to be the expert who intends to. That's the reason why we take masteral. And then in masteral, we will be asked what kind of or what topic do you really want to study? Because in the future, when we go to our doctorate, that will be our expertise. So the interviewer in most cases is a subject matter expert who intends to understand respondent opinions in a well-planned and executed series of questions and answers. Like for example, this interviewer in the media, they need credentials, the ability, the honesty, the rational, and being smart. So those are the characteristics of an interviewer that we have to have. I don't need to elaborate on this. Okay, let's go here. The interviews are similar to focus group. Remember that it's similar to focus groups and surveys. Remember, there is a focus group and surveys, and it is a form of interview. But there is a but later. When it comes to garnering information, maybe in getting information from the target market or target population, target respondents, but are entirely different in their operation. So even though focus groups and surveys are the same, are just a form of interviews, they have a different operation. What's that operation? Okay, let's read. Focus group are restricted to small group of 6 to 10 individuals. I see. So focus group is only a small group of people. From the word focus, maybe if we have less than 6 individuals, maybe one to 5 individuals, maybe that's already a case study. So when it turns out to be you have a respondent of 6 to 10 people, that is a focus group. So you interview these people. Interviews are conducted with a sample from a population and the key characteristic they exhibit in their conversational tone. So this, for example, this is an illustration of a focus group. So there is a fish, and there is from a population, so you only get a small fragment or a small portion of that people. Like for example, this. So there are only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and maybe there were only 5 people here, and the other 6 will be the interviewer. So that's just that is the illustration for this. Okay, the practice of interviewing in research. So how an interview is used in research. I will read. A structured interview. Actually, these are the following will be 3 kinds of interviews in research. Okay, the first one will be a structured interview, are defined as research tools that are extremely rigid in their operation and allows very little or no scope of prompting the participants or the respondents to obtain and analyze results. So there's no need really in any survey, there's no need for a researcher or for a participant to analyze the result of their answer, because it is our job to analyze our results. To analyze the results, which are the answers of the respondent. So in a structured interview, sa madaling salita, you have crafted the SOP. We have the statement of the problem. And from the SOP, the questionnaires should be aligned to the SOP. Question number 1, ito yun. Yan, for example, demographic profile. Question number 2, ito yung mga tanong-tanong dyan. Number 1, 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, etc., etc. Kung gaano kahaba ang gusto mo itanong, it is a case to case basis. Number 3, question number 3, yan na, etc., etc., etc. So in a structured interview, what you ask to the first respondent will be the same question you ask to the second respondent. There is no difference. Structured interviews are excessively used in survey research with the intention of maintaining uniformity throughout all the interview sessions. As I said a while ago, there is no different questions asked from different respondents. Otherwise, that is no longer a structured interview. But in a structured interview, what you ask to the first person, to the second, third, etc., should be uniform or the same. Next, the semi-structured interview. Okay, so before that, let's go first to the unstructured interview, which is the opposite of the first of the structured interview. I will no longer read this, but you can screenshot these things. It only says that you can ask different questions from different interviewer based on your personal analysis of their answers. You need if you need elaborations, so you can ask here. You can ask the first question here, and ask the second question 1. There are many reasons why. For example, you cannot ask this particular question to that person because this question is intended only for female or for male. So you know already the answer for that. So things like that goes in a structured interview. So a semi-structured interview will be between a structured interview and unstructured interview. Maybe it's like this. Respondent 1, you ask a structured interview. What is this? Where, when, why, that, yan. Like, parang ganyan. Then, after that, you go to elaborate. You mag-elaborate ka. So, the same question will be asked to the second person, elaborate. The same question will be asked to the third, to the fourth, to the fifth, elaborate. So, that will be the meaning of semi-structured interview. Structured, the same. Unstructured, not the same. Semi, the same. A semi-structured interview, the same all, plus elaborations. As simple as that. So reminder, since there are no guidelines for these interviews, it means the unstructured interview, a researcher is expected to keep their approach in check so that the respondents do not sway away from the main research motive. For, ayun nga, sinasabi ko kanina, dapat, even though if you elaborate questions, it must be based on the answer of the person. If you want elaborations, it must be contextual. It must be contextual to the goal or to the aim of the research. The intent of the interviewer, the interview should primarily take the consideration the participants' interests and skills and other considerations. All the conversation should be conducted within the permissible limits of research. The limitations, the limitation and scope of the research, the skills and the knowledge of the researcher should match the purpose of the interview, and researchers should be understood the do's and don'ts of unstructured interview. So in other words, guys, an interview is very important in research because it gives you clarification, it gives you the perspective of a population, and it gives you the elaboration. You know, it is a certain it gives you a certain spark of understanding. Kaya pala gano'n, hindi ko naisulat kung bakit pala ganyan pala dahilan. Kaya may susulat mo siya sa research. You can add more details in your research. And you know, like for example, in an orchestra, it is like a piccolo or a tuba. Hindi sila importanting mga instrumento sa orchestra. Pero kapag inilagay mo sila, ay beautiful music, like for example the Tchaikovskys who are very prominent with the use of these brass instruments. Okay, moving on. In observation, the second one is observation, a way to gather data by watching people, events, and noting physical characteristic in their natural setting. So observation can be overt and covert, or maybe overt or covert. I don't know the right pronunciation, but it's overt and covert, or something like that. So just look for the right pronunciation. And however, the meaning is more important. Subject know that they are being observed for the overt or overt, and the covert or covert do not know that they are being watched. So those are two different things. Like for example, in the Bobo Daw, the marshmallow test, those are covert. Or for example, naman the second one, the overt, sa school, the principal watching over the teacher's performance in the classroom management, etc. So researcher becomes a participant in the culture or content being observed. Type of observation. So there are three main, but there are many others. Okay, let's go to the three main types of observation. The first is the participation observation. Researcher becomes a participant in the culture or context being observed. Requires researcher to be accepted as part of the culture being observed in order for success. So in participant culture, in participant observation, researcher becomes a participant in the culture. So makikisama ka dun. Ano yung mga sample nito? Sa ethnographic, ethnographic research, maganda to. Minsan yung ibang researcher pa nakikitambay, nakikitira pa sa mga lugar na pinupuntahan nila para mapag-aralan yung kultura nila, para manamnam ang essence ng kultura ng isang lugar, something like that. So number 2, the direct observation of researcher strives to be unobtrusive as possible so as to not bias to the observations more detached. So technology can be useful. Ayun sinasabi natin kanina, direct observation, there are two things na makikita natin ito pag binasa natin yung second one. Okay, I will just read the third one pala. Indirect observation, results of an interaction, process or behavior are observed. For example, measuring the amount of plate waste left by student in a school cafeteria to determine whether a new food is acceptable or to them. Okay, so the direct observation, nakikita mo ng direkta. Yung indirect observation, hindi mo siya nakikita ng direkta. For example, ang halimbawa nga dito, yung nagluluto sa kitchen. Like for example, sabi nga minsan nasa restaurant ka, Kapag nasa restaurant ka, the chef, hindi na kailangan pumunta doon kung gusto mo ang pagkain. Kapag yung plate mo ay puno pa rin ng pagkain, it only means at bumalik siya sa kitchen, nakita ng chef, ay hindi nagustuhan. It's indirect observation. Pero pag nakita ng chef na yung pagkain mo ay wala ng laman, at binalik siya sa kitchen at nakita nga nung chef, ibig sabihin nagustuhan. Very simple, indirect observation. Direct observation na gagamit ito sa science. For example, sa mga there's a weird story na just for a person to observe. Darwin is said to observe a plant move for na-observe siya for 2 hours just to see the plant how it grows. Gaano siyang kalaki tumutubo sa loob ng ganitong panahon and things like that. So, direct observation, you see it directly. Participant observation, you don't just see, but you participate in a culture for you to know, to not just to observe, but to really integrate the culture within you so that manamnam mo yung ibig sabihin ng kultura nila at malaman mo talaga yung gusto mong malaman sa research mo. Okay, the other types of observation. This is used in saan ko ba ito nakita? Sa Harvard University ata ito. So, usability testing involves both observing and listening to participants as they attempt to complete tasks with a user interface, so remote sensing, the use of technology. In contextual inquiry, the second one, means observing people in their natural environment as they demonstrate their typical task, ethnography. So, pareho ng participant observation. Kaso nga lang, dito sa contextual inquiry, maaaring hindi ka nakikisama ng bonggang-bongga. Yan. Susunod, in naturalistic observation, the researcher attempts to observe one or more people unobtrusively without interacting with them. The 100 monkey. Binigay ko halimbawa 100 monkey. Kasi if, in Japan, may mga nag-observe doon ganito. Hindi sila nakikita eh. Pinag-aralan nila. So, merong mga sweet potato, ang tawag ba, kamote. So, yung unang generation ng mga monkey doon sa island na yon, yung kamote, kinakain na nila ng direkta. Ibig sabihin, madumi. Ngayon ang ginawa ngayon nila, yung isang unggoy, nakita niya sa isang tao, nakita niya lang sinubukan ng mga scientists na naghinugasan yung kamote, edi malinis na. Tsaka kunyari kinain ng scientist, tapos nakita ng isang unggoy. Hanggang sa pagkalipas ng second generation, lahat na ngayon ng unggoy naghuhugas na ng kamote. So that's the 100 monkey effect. So in shadowing the fourth one, excuse me, the researcher follows participants around as they perform their daily tasks. Or ito marami ito makikita sa YouTube. Yung example, a day with a PhD student, a day with a professor, a day with a musician, etc., etc. So you can see them at YouTube po. Also, these are example. But we have to consider many things when you observe. Like for example, location and observation. Look at these Natural Geographic people. They struggle running off on a bear, and they are hiding somewhere there inside the rock caverns, etc. So another one is the proximity to the participant and amount of interaction. So there are interactions which doesn't need you to interact directly to the people or to communicate with the people, as the first illustration one. The second one uses the telescope, and the third one using a conversation through a seminar, and then the focus group, and then telescope, just additional. And then the last one is the participants' knowledge of being observed. So as I said, look at Mr. Bean. This is a very classic show. Mr. Bean make patawa there without the knowledge of that is a two-way mirror that the people outside are actually seeing him. It's funny because Mr. Bean is like doing some funny funny things there. Okay, the second one will be the participant or the respondents or maybe the teacher is actually being observed during classroom observation by the principal or master teachers. Yan. So in summary, we're done. Interview and observation are useful tools in getting results in research. Interview is used to get a first-hand information about the respondents. Observation is used the same as well as to verify or elaborate. Both interview must be equipped with valid questions and support questions elaborations. Both interviews and observation must be carefully planned as to types will be used. What types will be used. So in that sense po, maraming salamat po, and I'm Saldi Carion Jr. po reporting. Thank you po.